right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our council meeting for Monday, August 18th. Moving well through summer here. First order of business is going to be the adoption of the minutes of the council meeting held August 6th, and I look for a recommendation. Moved by Councillor Lefebvre, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any errors or omissions? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now moving to approve the agenda. I do want to make one small alteration. Under bylaws for final adoption, there is one bylaw that both myself and Councillor Lefebvre have previously declared conflicts on, and that is number 3, Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2012, number 2000.82. I'd like a motion, if possible, from Council to remove that one item and obviously adjust the recommendation that goes along with it. What we can do is then defer that to the next meeting, and the reason being is that if both myself and Councillor Lefebvre step out, we will not have a quorum, so you won't be able to vote on it. So that's a recommendation moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Neufeld. Any discussion? Can we vote on that? Yeah, for that, yeah, that's fine. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? All right, so the agenda has been amended as just discussed and approved. Okay, moving on to delegations. We have 2 delegations this evening, the first of which is from our Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce. It's an update on economic development projects and a presentation by Kim Burden, who is the Executive Director.
So,
floor is yours, Mr.
Mayor Berger, Council, thank you very much for the opportunity. As you know, the Parksville District Chamber of Commerce has taken on the role of leading a group called Oceanside Initiatives, which is a group of folks from all 3 levels of local government, both chambers, Downtown Business Association, the Tourism Association, Vancouver Island University, and the school district. And we've been plodding along for some time now, creating the groundwork to be active in the economic development world for the region. This is a regional function. We had the competitive assessment of the Oceanside region, which we presented to you. The most recent project was to develop a set of marketing tools and a strategy to do some business attraction. But before I get into that, I just want to touch on a couple of other things. Economic development is about way more than business attraction. Actually, business attraction is the most expensive part of the economic development family with the least result. It's when you get a result, it's wonderful. But at the same time, it's from a sustainable community perspective, it's far more important that we ensure that the businesses that we have are successful and that they are able to grow and that they are able to be passed on to a new buyer when the owner is prepared to retire. So I want to hit on those 2 things first. Retention and expansion. You all participated in something called the Business Walk last February. It was tremendously successful from the perspective of gathering some data about businesses in our community. It was a success from the fact that the businesses that we contacted had one message that was common: you care. And I think that was really important, that the participation from both the Chamber and Council indicated that caring attitude towards business in our community. So we're planning another one. The Chamber Board has actually indicated that they'd like to do 2 a year. We're planning another one for sometime in probably mid to late October, and we will bring that to your attention. And I want to see if we can't expand that out into the regional district and possibly see if we can get the Qualicum Beach Chamber involved in their community and do it all at once. It's a good tool, and if we can find through interviewing businesses and through talking to people, if we can find what it is that they need to expand and create more jobs in our community, then that's a real bonus because they're here. The other thing that we've been working really hard on is succession, business succession, and ensuring that there are purchasers for businesses. We've been participating in the provincial nominee program. I go over this year, I'm making 4 visits to Vancouver to speak to groups of investors, probably in the neighborhood of 50 per person, per session rather. I'm seeing a couple of issues there that are impacting our local businesses. We've had several people come from those sessions where we've presented the Oceanside region, and they've come interested in investing in businesses in our community, but there's a long waiting time for applications to be processed, and it's creating a little bit of an issue for businesses where an immigrant investor will come, view a business, decide that this is what they want to do. They will make the offer on the business, and then they have to go through the process. The process right now is backlogged. They have approximately 1,700 applications that are sitting there waiting to be processed. They receive somewhere in the neighborhood of 900 applications per year, and they're able to process somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 applications per year. So there's some work that needs to be done there. I'm attempting to set up a meeting with Minister Bond. I have some suggestions that I'd like to see the provincial government implement to provide a bit more screening at the front end so that we don't, maybe we can get the cream of the crop instead of anybody that wants to apply. There doesn't seem to be any front-end screening. And I also think that there's some room to possibly hire some more folks to remove that backlog. The application process costs the applicant $3,000. It takes somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 hours to process an application. So I think we're making money as a government. We're certainly covering the costs. So I don't want to see the government dip into the budget further to process things, but if they can make sure that the applications are being covered, cost recovery, then that's fine. So we're working on that. Now, on to the latest project, from which we received funding from the city. This was the Parksville Qualicum Beach Business Attraction Toolkit. We hired a company from Victoria, actually, Encore Communications, and we gave them a set of parameters and sent them off to do their thing. This is a PR communication firm. The first thing they came back to us with was a bit of a tagline. We wanted to ensure that we used the existing branding that the Tourism Association worked so hard to develop, so that you see the Parksville Qualicum Beach piece very clearly there. And that is on everything that we're doing. You can see it on that little postcard that I gave you. This is the first page of the website, although it doesn't come through the way that it's supposed to because you guys are still using Internet Explorer, and we won't go there. It's way prettier on Chrome and on Firefox. So. There is a video attached to this, and I'm not going to play that video right now, but you can see it. There on the front page. It's the video that was produced using existing lifestyle entrepreneurs. That's our target market, is 30 to 50-year-old lifestyle entrepreneur who can work anywhere, and the caveat that they can buy a house for less than $500,000, that they can spend their afternoons on the beach, they can raise their families in a safe and secure environment. There are lots of attributes to our communities and to the Parksville-Qualicum Beach region that just scream to these folks that this is the place that they really want to be. And it's been proven. I've been spending a lot of time walking in the mornings and meeting people that are visiting our community, and of course I meet them at the visitor center as well. They love what we have to offer, and they're wanting to find ways to be here, and if they can find a way to earn a living, they're going to be here. So the folks that we're looking for are folks that can work anywhere in the world. Several of them are here. We used their experience and their talents to produce the video, and also we used their experience and their talents to we interviewed them extensively to make sure that we had the right plan. We've had an opportunity to use the materials already. We were given an opportunity to participate in a province of British Columbia booth. That's something called CGRAPH. CGRAPH is, I think they attracted about 16,000 people this year, and it's an exhibition of folks who are in the gaming industry, the computer graphic design industry, the film industry, digital media. So we had an opportunity to go over, display the things that we had produced. We had a 15-minute speaking time, and it didn't cost anything other than the expenses for the two folks who went, and they were Luke Sales and Patricia from the Qualicum Beach, town of Qualicum Beach. Their age, etc., fit the demographic we're chasing a little better than me. And I was busy enjoying myself at Slocan Lake during the conference. So from what I hear, it went really well. And whether or not we see any results from it, I have no idea, but it was great to go out and test the water. I do have a request. The group that did the work here have put together a proposal for us to do a 3-month follow-up of actually doing marketing, getting out there and talking to blog writers and those sorts of things, and making sure that the information that was developed is being used. They'd like $4,500 for the 3-month period, and I have confirmation that the town of Qualicum Beach is willing to put half of that in, and I am making a request of the city of Parksville for the other half. And the other, going forward, we are working on finding funding to do a strategic plan for the next 5 years. I think it's time now to stop and make sure that we have a real solid direction for where we're going and a solid plan for the next 5 years. And then it's our plan to take that strategic plan to the regional district of Nanaimo and ask them to fund it. So we're looking at some core funding over a 5-year period from the regional district. We've had some very, very preliminary discussions at the staff level with them, but we don't have anything to present at this time until we do the strategic planning piece. So we've got a couple of feelers out for funding to fund somebody to come in and develop a strategic plan for us going forward, and then we'll take that to the regional district. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to receive any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Burton. So I will open the floor to questions, comments from council. Councillor Lefebvre, then Councillor Neufeld.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation, Kim. Tell me a little bit more about business succession. Are you actually identifying those businesses that are saying that in 2 or 3 or 4 years or 5 years, I want to sell my business, I want to retire, I want to do those sorts of things? Is that what's happening, or are there other aspects to it?
We're looking at existing listings. We're also working with Venture Connect, which is an arm of Community Futures, who are doing what you're talking about, identifying people that are looking forward and getting them ready to sell. A lot of business owners, they run their business, they do a great job, but when it comes time to selling their business, they don't really have a good grasp of valuation and the sorts of things that a buyer is going to want to look at. So that's something that Venture Connect has been looking after. We've been taking, and getting business listings is an interesting challenge. They're not always listed. I know of several businesses in the community where the owner wants to sell, but they're not going to go near a listing at this point. So we've been trying to pair them up with folks, and we've been having some pretty good success with regard to bringing folks to our community. And I entertained 5 people from the last session that I did, so it's working.
Follow up, Your Worship.
Yeah, and then I want to move on to Councilor Neufeld and then Councilor Morrison.
Can the city help out with the provincial government officials when we go to UBCN? We'll be requesting meetings with different ministers. Can we help out if you prepared for us some sort of a one-pager talking about the challenges and the problems? We could bring that also from the city's perspective.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks very much for being so proactive. I think this has got lots of potential.
Yep.
Councilor Neufeld.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation, Kim. I have 2 questions. One deals with you started off with 1,700, 900, 250, and you're talking about they. And in fact, they refers to the provincial government and what they are capable of doing or not capable of doing. That being the case, when we look at the winnowing process, you're suggesting that in fact we should have greater screening at the beginning rather than letting it come down to the last 250 and find that they want to go ahead right now and it can't be done. How can we speed that up? I mean, what can we do? And I guess this follows on from what Councillor Lefebvre says. What is the process? How is it tied up? That's the first question. How can we address that? How can you address that, for that matter?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I've asked for a meeting with the minister. I've talked to our MLA. I have some suggestions for the minister, and I'd like to have that conversation.
Okay. If I could have the second one, Your Worship, the 2250 that you're asking for us as far as the half. Mm-hmm. When do you expect that? What's it going to do? Can you be a little bit more clear as to how that's going to go, if you would please, there?
Sure. It's the proposal is, excuse me. The proposal is from a PR firm, which is what Encore, the people that prepared this, are, and they are going to ensure that this information gets out to the media, to the folks that it needs to be focused at. They're asking for $1,500 a month for their time for a 3-month period, and I'd be happy to share the proposal with you if you like.
Go ahead, since he's...
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Yeah, then out of that, what you're saying is that there will be a strategic plan follow-up through, and what is that going to cost us? That's
a separate discussion, or a separate project. Okay. I don't intend to come to the city with any kind of a funding request for that. We do have a couple of irons in the fire. I've got a request into the provincial government, and Ms. Tardif and I have worked on a small business roundtable open for business awards, and the award is $10,000, which is roughly the budget that we need to cover the cost of the strategic plan, and that's what we said we were going to do with the money when we submitted, so hopefully we're successful there.
All right, thank you. What I might suggest, Mr. Burden, is that, and we'll go to Councillor Morrison in a second, is that perhaps with that request, if you could provide maybe some detailed information, and even not necessarily needing you to come back to council, but if you could provide that to us, we can have it on the next meeting and have a discussion with the detail there. Because I note we don't have our financial people here this evening either, and this is the first time council's hearing of it, so we want to know what our contingency...
Thought I'd surprise you.
Yeah, we love surprises. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Kim. As you know, I'm definitely happy to see the city take part in economic development functions like this, and being able to utilize the group of people that we have in the initiative, Oceanside initiatives makes sense. I'm quite happy to fund it. I think the amount we spend on economic development is fairly small, so I'd like to see the fit into the budget. I'm sure we can find that, so I'll certainly be supporting it when it comes back to us.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up with some of the questions that have been asked, and so the extra $22.50 is to get the word out there, and when do you expect some kind of a return or people buying into it? Do you have any ideas, or just...
I think it's happening now.
Okay.
I'm seeing, in my office, I'm seeing people who are interested in starting a business. I get requests from people for packages. We're starting to see people here as a result of the various presentations that we've been doing. We've got the major investment of the Academy, I think, is part of us getting the word out that we're open for business and we're looking for investment in our community. To be able to, as I said at the beginning, business attraction is the most expensive part of economic development, and it has the least result. Okay, it's the least bang for your buck, but it's an important part of the three units of economic development. Attraction is what it is. As I said, retention and expansion is the best place to put your energy. But again, there's only so much you can do there, and we're doing the best that we can. You guys know I'm running this off the side of my desk, right? And have been for a while, which is why I think it's time to develop a strategic plan and take it forward for some kind of core funding from the regional district. It's a regional function. So to give you an answer as to when I expect results and how much I think it's money well spent. It's not a lot of money, and it gives the community exposure to the right people. That's the key. It's getting to the bloggers that write about where the best place to do business is. It's getting to, we're not going to take out ads in magazines. We're not going to take out ads in newspapers because that's too much of a shotgun. We want to really focus on our target.
All right. Any further questions or comments from council? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Burden, for spending the time with us here this evening. It sounds like you've been more than busy.
Thank you for having me. I've been on a holiday, actually. It's my first day back. It's kind of
exciting. Nice. Oh, what a wonderful thing for your first day back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're now moving on to our second of our two delegations this evening, and this is from, and I'm going to have to ask you, Kathleen, how do I properly pronounce your last name? Falvai? All right, so this is from Kathleen Falvai, and this is regarding the use of weed control products in Parksville. So, Kathleen, you've got a first-hand view of how this all works, and you're ready to go. So great. I will certainly turn it over to you. Just
Thank you.
Enjoy yourself, and we'll be back when you're concluded.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address these concerns. In mid-July of 2014, I awakened at 6:30 a.m. to a noise outside my bedroom window. And when I got up to investigate, I discovered a strange chemical odor had entered the room through a slightly open window. It was only open that much, thank heavens. The gardener of my strata complex, wearing protective gear, was using my outside tap and hose to mix concentrated chemicals in a large container. The force of the water had stirred up the contents, hence the airborne particles causing the noxious odor. I checked our community bulletin board and copied down the names of the chemicals used in this spray. PAR 3 PCPA 27884 with listed active ingredients Mecroprop, 2,4-D, and dicamba. These chemicals have been banned in most of Canada on the recommendation of the Canadian Cancer Society and in the wake of recent devastating ecological problems. Prince Edward Island banned these chemicals after extensive and repeated fish kills and the total devastation of a lake called Sutherland's Hole. Every fish, snake, and snail in the lake was killed with runoff from a nearby potato field after rain. Herbicides were found in household dust a quarter of a mile away from any spraying area in amounts serious enough to harm a child. The provinces of Quebec, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Alberta also have provincial bans preventing the use of these carcinogenic chemicals for cosmetic lawn purposes. Premier Christy Clark indicated in the last election that she would also support a similar ban in BC, but has not done so. The economic concern of treating and caring for a steadily increasing number of cancer patients will put a huge strain on the public health budget of the province in future years. Many municipalities across BC have shown foresight in not waiting for this ban to take effect in this province, but have implemented municipal bans on cosmetic herbicides and pesticides to protect their citizens and their water supply from contamination. Most major cities on the mainland have already imposed this ban. And on Vancouver Island, Victoria, Oak Bay, Esquimalt, Nanaimo, Qualicum Beach, Courtenay, Comox, and Cumberland have banned these carcinogenic herbicides. The city of Parksville is missing from this list. We had a heavy rainfall the day after our spraying. Despite the fact that the online instructions for using dicamba state that it should not be sprayed if there is rain expected, the water flowed past our homes down onto Morrison Avenue and into the storm drains located along the roadside. Down at the beach access on McMillan Street, located at the end of the beach boardwalk, you will see the large pipe and the stream flowing from the storm drains onto the beach. We are not the only strata development that use these products. There are others, including private residences. Would anyone care to drink from this pipe? Then why subject the fish and clams and starfish to this lethal cocktail? Do the innocent children playing on the beach deserve to take the risk of playing or wading in this muck? The Canadian Cancer Society warns that young children are at an increased risk due to their undeveloped immune systems, more permeable skin, and behaviors. They play on lawns and they put things in their mouth. Reliable sources state that over 90% of insecticides and 95% of herbicides reach destinations other than their target. A mother deer and her fawn showed up the day after our spraying to eat off of our newly poisoned lawns. At my request, our strata has agreed to stop using these products. 2,4-D is associated with increasing cancer rates, higher percentage of birth defects, including limb reduction, cleft palate, hypospada. The neurological effects in the short term are dizziness and confusion, and in the long term, reduced IQ and brain damage. We don't want our children wading in this. 2,4-D is implicated in the ongoing destruction of the honeybee population. The cancer effects. The incidence of acute lymphatic leukemia, childhood brain cancer, and Wilms tumor in teens rose sharply in areas where 2,4-D is highly used. My fact sheet on dicamba reports there's an increased risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma associated with this chemical. Vapors can drift up to 5 or 10 miles from this poison, hence applicators are warned not to use it on a windy day. However, it can remain on treated areas for up to 13 months, as it is the most persistent of contaminants. There has been an increase of nearly 60% in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in agricultural areas where this herbicide is used in California, leading consumer groups to insist on the consumer's right to know the dangers. Workers spraying these herbicides have 6 times the risk of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma than the general population. So why are we using this in Parksville to get rid of a few dandelions? Dicamba is mobile in soil and has contaminated rivers, ponds, and groundwater. In the U.S., dicamba-contaminated groundwater has been found in 17 states. We have a large senior population in Parksville. Many in strata complexes where they're often very accepting of whatever the gardeners choose to use for weed control, lacking the information that they need to make informed choices. I have found by speaking with my neighbors that many did not want the spraying, but they were hesitant to speak up because they felt they had no choice. Many have an illness or compromised immune system, putting them at a much greater risk. Our hardworking Strata Council members were not aware of the bans across other Canadian provinces or the municipal bans in our own province. Most of us have children and grandchildren who visit and who are exposed to these herbicides on our lawns as well. If Parksville had a municipal ban in place, the most vulnerable members of our society would have some protection. There are alternatives for weed control that do not pose these risks. I would like to share this quote by the mayor of Qualicum Beach that I found in an Oceanside Star article dated July 15, 2010, and I've asked his permission to use it in my presentation. Whatever is put into the land or into the air ends up in all living things. That's something to think about. Please listen to the advice of the Canadian Cancer Society, the Canadian Association of Physicians, the Union of BC Municipalities, and many other worthy organizations who have supported cosmetic, herbicide, and pesticide bans. I hereby request that the City of Parksville protect our citizens, pets, wildlife, and water supply by following the good example of our neighboring communities and implementing such bans. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak on this topic.
All right. Thank you very much. Very good presentation. I will open the floor to questions, comments from members of council. Councillor Lefebvre.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Falvey. We spoke several days ago. I talked to staff after we spoke, and we use a little bit of pesticide in the city, not very much, and it's only applied in areas like where there's a weed control issue that would take extensive labor to do that job. But as far as I know, they're not put on the surface field, as far as I know.
You're right, Mark. I was very happy to see that down where the beautiful gardens are around the beach, we have a nice mix of clover mixed in with grass, so I know you're not using these broadleaf killers. But the thing is, without a municipal ban in place, everyone else can. The gardeners can. I've had a friend who went into Home Hardware, and she was told that she wanted something to kill the weeds in her driveway, and she was told that she could use this product if she lived in Parksville, but she couldn't use it in Qualicum Beach. And I think this is not something that should be going on in our community. We have to take a stand. There's young mothers from Qualicum Beach who bring their children down to that beautiful Lions playground, and we are such a close community that we really have to think of the bans in Nanaimo, the bans in Qualicum, and we're sitting there in the middle in one of the most beautiful areas in BC, and we're not protecting our citizens. We could cut our pesticide use in half if all the stratas and the private homes were not using this spray.
In my complex, I don't allow anyone in that doesn't use biodegradable products.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Each individual complex can do that, but you're right, I think that a ban, I'll let, Your Worship, do you want to say something?
Well, I've done a little bit of looking into it, and obvious question is, well, why doesn't the City of Parksville have a ban on these products? Now, historically, and you may recall as well, I know some members of council were around at the time, we have always supported a provincial ban, and the UBCM, the organization that represents municipalities, has, I think, passed, if memory serves correctly, more than one resolution urging the province to consider banning these chemicals, because I think many of us believe that that is really at that level that it can function properly. We have to have it off the shelves, in other words. The part of the problem that we face here at the city is that we've got a bylaw compliance department that is completely overloaded. I think at this point we're about 300 plus complaints in this year. These are legal matters, so some of them can take weeks, even months to resolve. I think my discussions this afternoon with our compliance officers, I think we're about 70 complaints behind right now in terms of processing, and so that is always challenging, because if we ultimately do create a new bylaw, it is going to generate some complaints. And so what I'm suggesting is not that we shouldn't seriously look at this, and I'm going to suggest to council you may want to get a report from staff on how one could potentially implement something like this, and perhaps even some context from other communities close by and further away that have done it. The question will then be, if we do want to do this, we really do have to start thinking about, in our budgeting and our discussions that are going to be coming up even at the provisional level in fall, of increasing our staffing levels for this additional type of work. And that is something that I think will become a central part of any discussion around this, because I would have a hard time arguing against your arguments with respect to the facts that you provide. Further comments from Council? Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thanks very much, Kathleen. I found it fascinating, and I'm also aware of some of the things that have occurred in other jurisdictions. I know that Roundup, for one, a trademark for a killer, literally, has been taken off the shelves in Ontario.
Yes, it was a wonderful victory for
I don't know
the Canadian cancer.
where else it's been done. I'm sure it's been done elsewhere as well.
It has, yes.
I know that there are places in which this type of product does not work in the sense that people just rise up above it and say, no, I will not have it. My wife, for that matter, and I have no idea if I should be doing this, but in fact, Weedman is sprays in our neighborhood, and it is extremely offensive both to myself and particularly to my wife. Because in fact we have small kids in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much.
And that's really it's very oppressive, and it's an invasion of our privacy as far as I'm concerned.
That's it. That's the point that I was making. I met a young girl, and practically in tears, and she was in Naked Natural shopping, and she told me, this was last week, she said, my neighbor just sprayed all my fence with a weed killer, and I'm afraid my dog's going to develop cancer now. And she said, how can he do this? How can he do this when it's my fence too? And she felt that she was at risk because she said her friend's dog had died of cancer after a similar, occurrence, and she was really upset by it. And I said, yes, I mean, in this situation, what your neighbor is doing is going to affect you, because these things can drift. And they found that with some of these poisons, they remained on the soil for months afterwards. It was 12 months in Florida, and that was the length of the study. They hadn't studied any longer, and it was still there. And they also did that study in Prince Edward Island, and they said after 13 months there was still residues on the soil. So I can't imagine why a person would want to do this. This is this map shows the areas that have protection, and these are banned. The darkest green is the best protected, and that's all the Greater Vancouver area, including Whistler, and it goes up here, and then of course this is Victoria, and it's all completely protected. Now a lot of these proponents, people who think that all these things are perfectly fine to use, they give us scary stories. They say, all our yards are going to turn into just weed-infested areas. But areas like Oak Bay are still beautiful. And areas like Qualicum Beach are beautiful. And when I called the mayor there today to ask for permission to use his quote, he mentioned to me that they are hiring young people, young students, to hand weed in the little floral areas there throughout the town. It's costing them a bit of money, but it's doing two things. Number one, it's keeping their community safe rather than use these poisons. And number two, it's teaching our young people respect for their environment. Do you remember a few years ago a school group had young children come and paint these little yellow fish in front of each of the storm drains, just to remind us that we shouldn't put anything in the storm drain that wasn't safe? These children got it. So why can't we as adults get it, that we have failed them? We refuse to listen, and we haven't protected them. And we have to do that. I don't think we have a choice here in Parksville. We can't have our children waiting in 2,4-D on the beach. It's going to scare the tourists away, and sooner or later they'll be looking on websites to see which areas are protected. So I think we don't have a choice. We can't put monetary concerns over the safety of our population. And I really ask, actually beg all of you to consider this and to seriously consider the fact that even if we don't use it in our home areas, like I don't need to even be here. I've already got the people in my condo to agree not to spray it, but I want to be here because I have grandchildren, I have children, and there are other little children in the city of Parksville who also need this protection, and that's why I've come.
Okay, I'm going to move to Councillor Powell. She's been patiently waiting.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. You know, about 6 years ago, I went to Canadian Tire and I bought some weed killer. And I had every intention, because I spent I don't know how many hours picking dandelions, and I had every intention of taking that home and spraying. Well, you know, it's still in my shed because I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I think I agree with you that we need to start looking at our environment and the impact we're having on our environment and the next generations and the next generations, because right now I don't think we're leaving a very good environment for our kids, and we need to stop, and we need to stop at some place. And so Your Worship said about a resolution or a motion to send it to staff for a report.
Well, I think that would be appropriate, yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to send this back to staff to come back with a report, including the cost for a bylaw enforcement officer, because our costs will go up, because I'm sure we'll have more complaints, as well as the feasibility of enforcing such a bylaw. And I'm not sure how much is being used in Parksville. I know people are pretty conscious, and I'm glad to hear that you got your strata to quit using it, because I know people in Parksville, or my circle of friends, don't water their lawns because of water conservation. There's a whole bunch of things that are happening, so I'd be curious too about how much it is being used.
So I have a motion on the floor. Is that a second?
I'll second it, Your Worship.
All right.
I just wanted to add to Councillor Powell's motion, if she considers this to be a friendly amendment, that when staff are coming back, hopefully with a ban on cosmetic pesticides, we look immediately at an information campaign, because the information we've received tonight from Ms. Falvai, if that went out along with the ban, that would go a long way to get it started, because we don't have the bylaw enforcement capacity right now, but at least with the significant amount of information on what is particularly dangerous and why it's dangerous, I think that would go a long way to start things rolling.
Yes, Mark, I wanted to speak to that too. I did notice.
Give me 1 second, sorry. Oh. I don't mean to be rude, but we do have a motion on the floor, so I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. So you're essentially saying that you would like to add to the motion that Councillor Powell has brought forward, that included in that report is mechanisms and means of providing an information campaign, and you feel that's a friendly amendment. Okay, so that's part of the motion then. So that motion is on the floor. So just on the motion now, is there any discussion amongst members of council? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add that just a simple, if we're banning on the fact that it won't be for sale in the stores anymore, would be a huge, because obviously by the surrounding areas have already banned it.
Yeah, I don't think we have that ability, but that would be addressed in the report that would come back. It would give us our limits anyway.
There was one other thing that I did want to bring up.
Okay, go ahead.
It was that in my research of the bans in Nanaimo and the ban in Qualicum Beach, Nancy Falconer of the BC Cancer Society, she came up from Victoria, and she did an education program, and she also did a presentation to both councils, and she explained how it works best if you do an education program for the residents of the city. And I did call her today, and I asked, she was in an all-day meeting, but I've left my number, and I do intend to ask her if she would come up, and if Parksville City Council would like to have a presentation by her, she can explain how she conducted this education program in our two neighboring cities. And it doesn't get it out of the stores, because only Christy Clark can do that. Yes. But in Nanaimo, they have found that with telling people that there is a fine, and if you have a fine of $250, up to $10,000 for using this, you're going to think twice about buying it and using it. And of course, it will take it out of all the condo and strata complexes because they have to post what they're using on the wall. And I don't think they're going to risk a $10,000 fine for using this. So I don't think there'll be as much enforcement needed as you think right now. But I know that they've done it in all these other communities.
Right.
Their gardens are still very nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're aware of that. So getting back to the motion then, is there anyone else on council wishing to speak to the motion before I call? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, very good. So Mrs. Felvai, you've already provided some information, and if I know our media, there will likely be some reports with respect to this presentation. So you've already taken a positive step forward. You'll certainly remind people that this is going on, certainly could be going on in their stratas. You're right, we're a city full of stratas. So, and just like yourself, you may not have even been aware of that gardener doing his thing until such time as you happen to have your experience. So,
right. This was the second spray. I've only lived there since last November, and this is the second spray. I wasn't home when they did the other one.
Yeah.
I just assumed they were using some little vinegar-based spray, and I wasn't worried at all. But when I saw that fellow suited up with a mask, and I just realized that he was using something that should not be used in a residential area. And I felt very badly about that, and I felt badly for the other residents. I've had notes in my mailbox thanking me for doing this, and everyone in our strata seems quite content to have this dangerous spraying stopped.
all right. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we will obviously have a report coming back, as you heard us discuss. And let's make sure, and I'm speaking to staff, that Ms. Falvai is made aware of when that report is available so that she can get a copy for herself to see what we will then be further discussing.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too. Would you like to have a copy of
If you wouldn't mind leaving that with Ms. Ross or Ms. Tardif, that's perfect. All right, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, into the reports phase of tonight's meeting, and we have a report from Mr. Russell. I'm starting to feel a little bit of deja vu, and if you wouldn't mind giving us the background with respect to the consideration of a temporary change to the liquor license for the Parksville Curling Club.
Yes, Your Worship. As was the situation over the last 8 or so years, the Parksville Curling Club is seeking to increase the capacity of their licensed area in order to accommodate special events. The existing liquor primary club license provides a permanent occupancy of 41 people and permits operations from 2 p.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Friday, and 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Saturdays, and 12 noon to 5 p.m. on Sundays. The Parksville Curling Club is proposing to increase the license occupancy on a temporary basis to basically accommodate the 230 square meter expanded area in order to provide for an additional capacity of 192 persons, bringing the total occupancy to 233 persons during the special events as noted in the staff report.
All right, thank you for that. So we do have a recommendation, Council, before you. Moved by Councillor Neufeld, seconded by Councillor Morrison, and discussion on the now motion. Go ahead, Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I think that this is just a further indication that we're doing something right as far as the Parksville Curling Club is concerned. We bring all kinds of tourists into town, and we provide for them with amenities that they expect at any curling bonspiel. I think this is appropriate, and we should be supporting it, and I see no reason to deny that. I think that this should go forward without any problem. Thank you.
All right, any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. All right, Mr. Russell, we're moving on to the second report, item B, and that is in regard to the consideration of the reissuance of a development permit to allow for mall renovations to facilitate a Canadian Tire store. Do you want to give us some very brief background, please?
If I may, Your Worship, development permit number 1208 to facilitate a Canadian Tire store at Wembley Mall was issued by Council on October the 15th, 2012. Per legislation, if the holder of the permit does not substantially start any construction with respect to that which the permit was issued, it will lapse within 2 years. As to date, no significant work has been started to renovate the building that is intended to house Canadian Tire, the Canadian Tire store, and it is likely commenced prior to this October. The applicant is requesting that the permit be reissued in order to allow for another 2 years for the project to proceed within the revised timeline.
All right, thank you. So, of course, this is largely a result of some delays that had occurred, and obviously the save-on has to be out and in business before we can do anything significant. So, to that end, is there a member of council that would, okay, moved by Councillor Lefebvre, seconded by Councillor Morrison, and that is, of course, the recommendation before the report. And any further discussion? Councillor Lefebvre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment. I gather that we're not to interpret this that Canadian Tire is going to start building a new store.
If I may, Your Worship, until the confetti falls on me in the grand opening, I'm not in a position to guarantee anything, but it certainly is shows a positive intent that they're still, at this point, contemplating proceeding.
Certainly does, and it's sure wonderful to see that steel in the air in that mall site that I think we've been talking about now for, what, a decade or more? All right, very good. So any further comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to our third report, and this is item C. Mrs. Thomas, can you give us the background with respect to the bylaw, notice, dispute, adjudication, registry agreement, and all these folks trying to get in on our good work?
Yes, Your Worship. In 2012, the City initiated the bylaw adjudication dispute resolution process in partnership with the City of Nanaimo. The City of Duncan and the District of Tofino wish to also join the partnership. In order to facilitate their participation, a new comprehensive agreement must be adopted by bylaw. The terms and conditions remain the same as the original agreement with the City of Nanaimo. The only change is adding the 2 new partners. The recommendations are as per the council agenda.
All right, so first this recommendation, and then there's some stuff up for readings later on. And do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Neufeld, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Any discussion? Straightforward stuff. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item D, and again from our Director of Administrative Services, 215 permissive taxation exemption applications. Can you give us a background, please?
Yes, Your Worship. This report presents the applications for permissive property tax exemption for the 2015 taxation year. The recommendations are based on the conditions set out in Policy 6.15 as previously adopted by Council, with the exception of the Parksville Lawn Bowling Club, whose current lease agreement does not include responsibility for property taxes. The recommendations are as per the Council agenda.
All right, so we do have a recommendation, a multi-part recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Neufeld. And discussion. I know what one councillor might be saying right now, but nonetheless, he's not here. So, with that in mind, all those in favor, opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. All right, that concludes our reports for this evening. We are now into bylaws for 3 readings, and we have one of those, and that is regarding bylaw offense notice enforcement amendment, number 1486.2. And there is a recommendation there to read it for 3 times. Moved by Councillor Lefebvre, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And now we're moving on to bylaws for final adoption. There are 5 bylaws for final adoption. Of course, we've removed one earlier in improving the agenda, which is number 3. The rest are all packaged together in a single recommendation, although I'm going to now take the opportunity to ask members of council, since we're going to be voting on these on a group, is there anything within that grouping that a person here around the table is not in favor of? Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I would vote against number 4 and number 5. So if you would just make note of that, please.
So just to let the record reflect, when we make this recommendation into a motion that you would be opposed to number 4, which is Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw number 214, number 2000.91, and number 5, which is Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 214, number 2000.96, the accommodation of Health Canada licensed medical marijuana facilities.
Right.
Okay. Very good. So we can ensure that the record reflects that. And now what I'm looking for is, unless another member of council wishes to speak to any of those items individually, a motion of recommendation minus, of course, the third item as previously discussed. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Lefebvre, yes. Thank you. And discussion then on that grouping. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. With the exception, of course, of what is indicated, yes. All right, moving on to new business. Does any member of council have any new business this evening? Councillor Neufeld.
Just a couple of things, Your Worship. Thank you very much. One of the things is that has happened is the Beach Fest Society has wound down now. The society finished off last night with over 90,000 visitors, somewhat less than we had last year, but still a very significant and wonderful experience. I know that my grandchildren and many other grandchildren from across the province and across Canada have enjoyed surely the sand sculptures and the beach and some of the things that have gone on there, and the Beach Fest, the Kids Fest, the Shine and Show, just all kinds of activities have been absolutely marvelous as far as bringing thousands of people into the community and enjoying our amenities here. In addition to that, what's coming up this weekend is the Western Canada Nationals, as far as volleyball championships concerned, and the ladies and then the directors actually have been tearing down sand castles today, and they'll be putting the sand over on the volleyball courts. So the use of that sand will be another benefit as far as the beach volleyball is concerned. It has been just a tremendous summer, and I think tourism has, as our economic driver, has really done marvelous things for the community. So that's the one thing that I would have to say. There's a second thing, however, that is to me a little bit more alarming, and that's with respect to the ALC, ALR, the Agricultural Land Commission, and Agricultural Land Reserve. I attended a meeting last Tuesday in Nanaimo, and I think fortunately most of the speakers there were in agreement that they wanted to maintain the status quo with respect to the ALR, ALC here on the island, and Zone 2, in fact, would be appropriate for those people on the mainland, and it was really interesting. A number of people had their own visions as to what might occur, but they didn't feel that it was up to them to make judgment of others' desires as to what they might do with respect to Zone 2. The concern that I have is that, from my understanding, the Ermineskin properties that are owned by the Hobbema First Nations group have been sold, and so we here in council may be dealing with another group that would be bringing forward an application to take that land out of the LR. That was something that this council has been very adamant about, that we would not put forward any application with respect to that land as far as development is concerned. And I have no idea what the new owners would be desiring to do with that land. So it's a concern of mine, and we will have to look forward to it in the future.
All right, thank you for that. Any other members of council with any items of new business? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an update on the advisory, Council Advisory Committee. Get my words mixed up today. We do have a meeting tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have enough information to bring something back to council for the next meeting. The only other thing I had was I had the pleasure of going down to the beach, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, to thank the participants and the people there, as the city was a sponsor for the Parksville Idol competition. It was a fantastic group of people that were involved, really phenomenal talent. So I was quite happy. It was a beautiful night, and just nice to be able to sit and relax and watch them. So it's great.
Fantastic, and thank you for stepping in on that one as Deputy Mayor. Any other members of council? Anything else? Very good. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Lefebvre.
Thank you, Worship. Just very quickly, I wanted to thank the sponsors of the Kids Fest fireworks. I had attended the Canada Day fireworks, and the Kids Fest fireworks was just as super. It was an awesome sight, and it lasted a lot longer than I thought it would. So, I believe it was Quality Foods that put that on, so they should be thanked.
Very much so. Okay, that takes us now into a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Neufeld. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We don't have a closed session this evening, so we are done. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.